I think what surprised me is how quickly you can learn. I think definitely, when I started this, I had like 8, 9 years of work experience,
Mm,
in different areas, but mainly focused on marketing and brand building.
mm.
And I didn't think that I'd be ready to like start my own brand or like scale it and lead such a large team. As humans, we learn so quickly, and the more you do, the more you learn. So I think the big thing I would say is to anyone aspiring, like, don't be scared that you don't have all the answers.
Hello everyone, today my guest is Anushka Gupta, co-founder of MyMuse. MyMuse is India's first bedroom essentials brand dedicated to making intimacy easy, approachable and fun for Indians everywhere. Sounds good to me. Anushka and her husband started in a small apartment and now they operate a warehouse serving over 150,000 customers across 1,000 Indian cities. So in this episode, Anushka discusses smashing taboos and disrupting the industry, as well as the different and innovative products offered by MyMuse. She also talks about the pros and cons of being first to market, funding rounds and social media marketing. She also discusses the future of sexual wellness in India and what has surprised her most in her entrepreneurial journey so far. Finally, we delve into the topic of which city in India is the most friskiest and much, much more. So please enjoy the show. Thank you. Hello, Anushka. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Neil.
Awesome. Please tell the listeners what you're building.
So, me and my husband Sahil started a sexual wellness startup in India. It was India's first ever homegrown intimacy brand. We launched it back in 2021. Most people might not know exactly what a sexual wellness startup entails, but basically, we create and market products for intimacy. So, essentially, all kinds of different products for individuals to explore themselves, whether they're solo or with a partner, products for physical intimacy as well as emotional intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a range of products that we've launched over the years, but we started off with just 4.
Okay.
So back in 2021, we launched with a all natural lubricant, a personal massager, all natural massage oil, and literally like an aromatherapy candle. Idea was to kind of encapsulate everything that people might need when they're looking to get intimate, and kind of explore themselves or explore with our partner a little bit more. Over the years, in the last 3 years, we've now grown to having over 25 products. So we have a whole range of massagers for both men and women. We have a range of games and journals that we've developed in-house, that are designed to help you open up more, to have engaging conversations, explore your desires. And then, of course, health and hygiene products, like even like sexual wellness supplements to help with your libido, and things like white. So all kinds of stuff. And essentially for us, it goes beyond just being a sex toy company.
Yeah, what was the inspiration behind this and why sexual wellness?
My answer is usually just why not, right? I think when me and my husband started thinking about this, it was back in 2018, and it was back when we had just started dating, actually. So, of course, those types of conversations, I guess, were top of mind, but we were looking at it from more than a personal lens, but from actually like a societal lens. And at that point, my husband Sahil, he was in business school in the US, and he was thinking of moving back to India in a year, and I was living in Bombay and working here. And we had just been sort of ideating on what, the cultural landscape is like right now in India, what the business landscape is like, kind of asking ourselves, where's the country going? What are the areas that we feel are kind of rife for disruption or that haven't really evolved over the years? And just in general, sexual wellness was top of that list, right? Because when we think about sex, especially in the Indian context, it's something that just really isn't discussed openly, right? And that may be the case in other parts of the world, but it's definitely more so here in our country. And that is because of so much of stigma and taboo that's been built up over the years. People don't have open access to sex education at schools. They barely discuss it at home. It's only in the last few years that the media has kind of opened that conversation up more. So we just felt like as a country, India is growing and changing and evolving so much. But when it comes to actually thinking about how people engage in intimacy and actually experience it in their daily lives, that hasn't really changed because brands and companies haven't really kept up with it, and they haven't innovated and brought new products to the market and opened that conversation. So we were like, look, we're a young couple. We are speaking to other young people around the country, and we want to kind of understand, how do they look at intimacy? How do they deal with it?
Mhm.
What are the pain points that they might have in their own lives? So we spent a lot of time just like really diving deep into customer research. And this was fast forward, to 2020, when we really started working on this during COVID. We spent a bunch of time just like doing qualitative interviews with people from across the country of different, ages, different genders, different sexualities, and just asking them, like, when was the first time you got intimate? Like, what were the fears you had? How did you first learn about sex? Do you masturbate? If so, like, what is that like for you? Have you ever used products in the bedroom? We just started to discover that there were a lot of commonalities in how people across the country were feeling. There was an intense need for like privacy. People felt like they didn't have, the kind of space to engage in their, intimate lives. People lived in joint families with, parents and stuff around them, even after marriage. People were finding it difficult to communicate with their partners when it came to what their desires were. But overwhelmingly, like the number one thing that we found was that Indians across the country were telling us that while they may never have tried products in the bedroom, they were absolutely curious and they were eager to try something new. And that seemed to be like the number one answer that we got, that like we haven't tried, products other than condoms, maybe, or lubricants, if that, but we are super, super keen to explore. And we do want to explore more with ourselves or with our partners. And essentially what I think we uncovered was like what we think is a fundamental human truth. And that is that all humans want to get better at sex or have better sex.
Okay.
And that's generally just like a fact. So we were like, why not just create a brand that helps people do that, and along the way also creates education and content and makes that entire space something that people become more comfortable engaging with.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of fun there. Just going back to the customer research side of things, what advice would you give our listeners who are doing, maybe doing the same thing? They're doing customer research on a brand new market, as it were.
Yeah, I think
That's important.
honestly, like, it is the most important part of starting any business, right? I think we all come into something with preconceived notions, and you have an idea, and the automatic assumption is that I think this way. Of course, everyone thinks this way, and oftentimes when we even go into research, like running a survey or talking to our friends, we go into it with a lot of confirmation bias. We're seeking answers that validate what we want. But true, discovery, I think, is actually trying to uncover differing points of view and then seeing if your idea still holds validity, and even in the face of differing views. So I think the way we approached it was twofold. So we did obviously quantitative surveys that were easier to scale. We ran a Facebook survey where very quickly we got over 20,000 responses.
Wow.
We advertised that. We gave people the chance to win an Amazon voucher. So that was like a nice and easy hack, where you want to get responses. But in that survey as well, we made it very we made it quite lengthy, and we did ask questions beyond just like a binary yes or no question. So we were able to get some amount of like rich data there. But beyond the quantitative, we really focused on those qualitative interviews, and we set those up with a design researcher. And we did it with about 20 people, men and women from different backgrounds. And the idea there was that me and Sahil, who were the people with the idea, we were not the ones running the call. So no bias could kind of come in there. We had this researcher who was, asking questions, and we were the ones taking the notes. And the questions were a lot more than about product. I think the idea was to really like understand people's journeys. And I think with anything, whether, you're doing sex or you're doing fitness or you're doing, fashion or whatever it is, like really just going beyond product to understand what are people's daily lives like, because everyone's life is so different than your own. And if you're going into it with your idea, you will always draw from your own experience, but you have to be able to build for other people's experiences for that to, be something that they actually need and can use. So I think that was really a big thing. And then finally, what I'll say is we also, when we got into the brand side of things, where we wanted to actually get actionable data that we could use to build a brand, we actually prepped and created an entire like exercise
Mm.
for our participants where we prepped like different mood boards with images,
Mm.
images related to, intimacy, images related to like packaging, branding, even outside of, the landscape of sexual wellness. And we just had people do like a live mood boarding exercise with
Yeah.
us where they picked up images that were resonating with them, till date. Like we go back to those findings because we started to draw a lot of connections from that as to what kinds of things were really like
Mm.
people were drawn to. And because we were trying to build a gender neutral brand, it was important that we tried to get tonality and a look and feel that appealed to like as vast an audience as possible. So
Okay.
yeah, I think my advice is just like be quite open
Mm.
and try not to let your own bias creep in.
Because you must have had some assumptions that may be incorrect.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of our big assumptions, well, two actually, that were largely disproven in our early studies were number one, in what kinds of products people would want. So
Mm.
when we were looking to launch the brand, we had our initial set of products that we wanted to launch, and then we asked people what they needed the most.
Mm.
And that list did not entirely match. So, for example, condoms was something that we thought that we would launch with because we're like, hey, we're doing sexual wellness. Like, condoms is a huge part of that, and it's the most accessible part because it's something that people know and already use.
Mm.
So we initially planned to launch condoms of our own, but very quickly our customers told us that that's not something they would buy from us because they would not want to switch from a trusted brand, and it would take us time to build that customer trust. So we very quickly abandoned that idea. And even though now we're 4 years in, we still haven't launched condoms because we quickly realized that we don't want to dabble in the realm of sexual health. We want to stay firmly in the arena of sexual pleasure and intimacy, which are very, very different from, condoms. And maybe we'll do that in the future, but at least in this early stage of our journey, that's not a product that we wanted to invest in. And that came from our customers. And then the second thing was that we initially thought that women would be the early adopters of our products, especially pleasure products like massagers. And that was because we thought that, hey, like men either will be threatened by these products or B, will not see a use for them. But very quickly, even in our studies of with men and with married couples or couples in relationships, men were quite eager to be like, hey, I want to introduce this. I want my wife to experience pleasure. I want to prioritize her needs. I'm struggling to make, maybe satisfy her, make her have a good time. So I am keen to try something new. And that actually reflected in our early sales data and still holds true today, where 60% of our customers are men. And that actually happened even before we'd ever launched male specific products. Men were buying these products for their partners. And that was amazing, very, very pleasant surprise for us because that just meant that, men aren't being insecure about this. They are understanding that these products are meant to like enhance their sexual lives versus, be like a replacement for them.
Okay, cool. How would you sum up your first year then? Not mistakes, but what was the key learning?
I think the first year is like, I mean, it's intense. And I think you have to be super prepared that this will take over your life. And I think we were really lucky because we launched this business in COVID, and so we had no other life. This business became, everything that we breathe day in and day out. And me and my husband were literally like, we were fulfilling orders from the spare bedroom in our house. We were doing everything. We had an entirely remote team because obviously, COVID. So it was, very intensive, but also just really, really exciting. And I think it's obviously a phase that most people who do startups will go through, where at one point you are doing literally everything, and it's such a massive learning curve. But it's also really exciting because that's when you get that initial sort of confirmation of whether your idea could be something successful or not. You start to get that real market feedback and people's real-time reactions where, until you launch, everything is being built up to that. You're still wondering to yourself, like, is this gonna work? Are people gonna buy this? My biggest fear was like having a a spare room in my house just filled with vibrators that nobody was ever going to buy. But luckily they did, and we got to kind of really interact with customers, understand their, how they like the products and build off of that. So
Mhm.
it was amazing. I always look back on that year with like really happy memories because I think it's the time that you as a founder are also most closely connected to every part of your business. And as you scale, your role changes so much and goes from being execution driven to then building a team that's execution driven. And you have to start thinking more about, other things like fundraising, high level strategy, delegation, team management. So your role as a founder really, really evolves. And now we're in our fourth year of working on this business, our third year of having launched it. And I mean, my role has changed so dramatically, but the first year was the time when I was like the most, I would say, hands-on in terms of like literally doing everything from packing boxes to writing copy to designing website pages to, creating the brand, putting it out there, doing the social media, doing all the emails. And I mean, we're blessed. We've grown to like have a massive team now that today does so many different things that, are amazing. But it's interesting how your own role will keep evolving.
Talk about branding from scratch, just for our listeners. They may be
Yeah.
doing the same thing. Any do's or don'ts? Any tips? Any advice?
Yeah, honestly, branding is everything today, right? In a highly commoditized world where consumers have so many choices and options, and products are largely, I mean, the same, right? There's usually nothing so different about one product to the next. It really like brand does become your moat, and unless you're like an inventor with like a patent protected idea, chances are somebody somewhere will copy your idea at some point, and maybe we'll do it cheaper, or maybe we'll do it better. So at that point, what really will allow you to like keep your customer and retain them throughout their cycle is building a brand that people love and resonate with. I think really spend that time defining your voice, defining your values, who you are, why you exist. Go beyond colors and logo and really think about like your communication style. For us, when we were building a brand for intimacy and sex in India, it was so important to build a brand that people felt that they could approach, that removed like stigma, shame, and sleaziness, and kind of made this idea of like sex something cool to talk about. And the way we did that was through our design, through our language, really doing stuff in like a cool and different way. And also thinking about how your brand interacts differently on different touch points. So for example, on social media, we're a lot more fun and spunky and loud and playful. But when it comes to our packaging, it's a lot more discreet and minimal, because that was a customer insight we had that, people who are ordering these products at home, they don't want something loud to arrive at their doorstep that could raise any eyebrows. The design needs to feel discreet, so that they can, bring it home without worrying. But at the same time, the experience should be something delightful and exciting. So you do have to think about how people will interact with your brand in different places. And especially when you're running, a digital brand that also has a physical component, you need to think about those two things as like very different experiences, but at the same time need to have that cohesion. How you display yourself, on your website, on your social platforms versus how customers will interact with you offline. Those are very different things. And, your brand will continue to evolve. So you need to keep editing and keep changing it as well based on how you see your consumers reacting.
I suppose brand loyalty is important as well, because you want people to come back and buy your products over and over again, because they could easily go somewhere else, right? So
for sure.
Thoughts on brand loyalty?
I think with brand loyalty, it's really about like genuinely showing the customer that you care at different touch points. And I think for us, like a big part of that has been like customer service and like the post-purchase experience. So like even after you make the sale, that customer needs to be your top priority, and really like listening to them, listening to their feedback. If people come back with complaints, with reviews, with issues, really like servicing that in like a timely manner. I think a lot of places where startups can fail is not having their operational setup in place to deal with post-purchase issues. So you really need to have that sorted when you launch, because it can be one thing for a customer to buy, but then if they struggle with your product or struggle with the experience and you don't have the bandwidth to deal with that, they're never going to come back and they're never going to recommend you. So
Mm.
that's one thing. And the second thing I think is offering them value that's beyond just product. So really crafting exciting, interesting content. So we do that not just on Instagram, but we have an email newsletter that we've been running since even before we launched our products. And that's a massive community of engaged subscribers that open those emails every week. And we send them, emails about sex and love and relationships. And, we send them real life advice. We send them articles that we write, videos that we create. We leave them space to ask questions, and we'll actually get back to them with like a personalized response. So the engagement on that is massive. And I think that just keeps people loyal because the brand for them is then top of mind. Even when they're not purchasing products, we're still engaging with them on like a very regular basis. And the next time they have a need, they will come to us.
It's interesting because email marketing has been around for ages. People keep saying it's dead or dying, but he still seems to be the best way to get customers on board, as it were. Or
it's the cheapest form of marketing you'll ever have. It's absolutely, almost free. And I think with email marketing, it's been around forever, but people don't necessarily know how to do it right. I think for the most part, people think of it as like promotional, but email is actually a place that if you craft your content correctly, you can actually make it a two-way thing. So for example, in our newsletters, we keep experimenting with ways to get our customers to reply. So it's not like we're just spamming them with one-way communication. We leave them space to like reply to us. So we have like a confessions box where people can send in, stuff that they like, saucy secrets. We have like a Ask the Sexpert box where like they can send in their questions. We, have riddles, we have giveaways. So we make it a interactive thing rather than just one way. And we very rarely send purely product promotions. There may be product integrations where there's content that's relevant to what we sell, but it's never just like spam, like, oh, buy this, try this sale. Like it's very much content that we know will be interesting to our consumers, so that they don't just treat it like like another ad.
Interesting stuff. In terms of other marketing techniques, Google ads, do you use Facebook ads, social media influencers and stuff like that? Talk about that and what works and what doesn't work, basically.
Honestly, we use it all. We're a D2C brand, a digital first brand. So of course, Meta and Google are big parts of our performance strategy. I think for us, it's very different to other brands because we do face certain guidelines and restrictions because we're an adult product. So we just have to be very clever about the way that we word our ads and, the way that we show products. But that's restrictions that many different brands today face. You have to just keep understanding the algorithm and keep analyzing your ads to see what's working. Start creating like an evolving set of best practices as you're learning from, ad rejections, ad performance. Keep a very close eye on the dashboard so you can, anytime you make a creative, if it doesn't work, if you don't get the ROAS that you want or the click rate that you want, usually it's not that you need a new creative. Usually you just need to tweak it. So if it's a video, maybe try changing the first 3 seconds of that video and you will get a different results. Yeah, the first 3 seconds are the most important in a video because it's what we call the thumb stop ratio. So when a user is scrolling, for example, on Instagram stories, you're just scrolling an endless feed. And the reason to stop or to keep scrolling is what you see in those first 3 seconds. So that's a literal metric, right? Like how many people are holding their thumb down, thumb stopping content, right? And if your actual video could be okay, but if those first 3 seconds aren't catching the eye or getting the point across, you're going to lose that viewer, right? Attention spans, as we know, are constantly decreasing. So there's a lot of different things in an ad that you can tweak. You can tweak the CTA, you can tweak the intro, you can tweak your heading, you can tweak your copy, you can tweak, an image, whatever it is, there's different, like you have to think of an ad as being broken down into different elements. So just like a recipe, if you're a chef and you're making a batch of cookies, you have to keep testing like, okay, if I increase this by 1 teaspoon or if I remove this by half a teaspoon, what will happen? And usually it'll actually end up having quite a massive result on at the end. So with ads, I think it is a science as well as an art. And then with influencers, I think that's something that many people struggle with. I think it's one of the most contentious terms today because everyone knows that they need influencers, but everyone loves to hate influencers. So I think people have a very like love-hate relationship there. But I think what strategy worked for us is trying to go smaller rather than go bigger. So working with micro influencers and nano influencers rather than just trying to pay money for large influencers for like single pieces of content. And usually that strategy tends to work with startups because A, your budgets are lower. So you don't have crazy amounts to spend on like one reel from one mega influencer, right? And secondly, the more you work with smaller creators, they will grow with you. So they can become like an ambassador for your brand. You can do multiple pieces of content with them rather than just one off. And, you know, we've had creators that we've worked with from the time that we launched our brand. And when, you know, we started working with them, they maybe had like 3, 4, 5,000 followers. And today, just like we've grown, they've grown to now having like 100K followers and they still love us, you know, and they still want to work with us. So I think you have to like sometimes a long-term vision there rather than just be obsessed with like immediate results. And you will kind of end up seeing that bear fruit in the long run.
Well, most people just want to go viral, don't they? That doesn't seem to be the best sort of strategy long term.
I think going viral is it's usually a byproduct. I don't think or it's sometimes an accident. I think if your goal or intention is to go viral, it's going to be really tough. And there are obviously agencies and you know there's like meme marketing firms and there's like all these agencies that can make these promises like, oh, like, you know, do this and you'll go viral, but that doesn't always work. You know, sometimes it's the most accidental things that will go viral. And I think your goal as a creator or a brand should be to like create stuff and put stuff out there that you think is genuinely like going to make people notice or add value to their life, either be informative or be entertaining in some way, shape, or form. And then they will end up watching and sharing that. But if your goal is just like, oh my God, can I hop onto a trend or can I just do something to get people to like quickly share this, you may get results in the short term, but they will very quickly spike and then peter out. And you won't end up seeing a lot of long-term gain.
What's it like working with your husband?
It's actually surprisingly pretty great. I definitely don't know if every husband-wife co-founder has the same experience or, you know, even wants to work with their partner, but it's not something me and my husband ever imagined that we would be doing. It just kind of happened. And I think for us, touch wood, it's been pretty great because I think we have very complementary skill sets and we're very different in terms of what we're good at. Like he's definitely more business minded. He's more of a long-term strategic thinker. He's really good with his numbers. He's really great with strategy. I'd say I'm obviously more on like the creative side. I'm more detail oriented versus just trying to think of like top-down strategy. So I think we complement each other really well and we don't step on each other's toes. But at the same time, we're quite aligned in the way that we think. So we generally don't like disagree on the larger stuff, and if we do, we are able to like debate it out and you know figure that out. So I think it's been really good. I think it's also been good for our relationship because we have a lot more like respect for each other outside of just being husband and wife. Like I see the way he operates at work and he sees me, and I think that gives us like a really deep understanding of each other because normally you don't see your spouse in their workplace. You just hear about it from them at the end of the day when they're exhausted and you're like, how was your day? And, you know, they're trying to catch you up on like the last 12 hours and they're tired and they're never really going to tell you how it went. And you'll never get to see them like in their element, you know? But I get to see him and he gets to see me every day in like the highs and the lows. So I think we just really fundamentally like get each other, which is really nice.
Cool. What was the biggest disagreement that you had then?
I think it's hard. I can't really think of a specific thing. I think it's usually just like small things here and there. There's never been like a massive one because like I said, I think on the big things, we tend to like have a quite similar vision. But sometimes minor disagreements are there, you know, on like strategy decisions here and there, like should we, you know, do this tagline or that tagline or this product or that product. But it's never really the big stuff. I think on that, we tend to be quite aligned.
Cool. What were your first impressions of your husband then when you first met him?
So we were friends before we started
Okay.
dating and before we got married. And I actually know my husband through his brother.
Right.
His brother and I were in college together in Boston at Tufts. So I knew his brother before I knew him, and we were friends. And then through his brother, I met him, and then we remained friends for a long time. We never lived in the same place. He was always in the US, and I would see him on occasion when he would come to India to visit, or there was a brief period where I lived in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
and his family's from there, so he would visit there.
Okay.
So we always like bumped into each other over the years, but I always found him very interesting to talk to.
Okay.
And we always had like amazing conversations. And I think
Mhm.
for me, that's one of the fundamental things in the relationship. Like if the conversation is good, then that's like a great starting point.
Was it love at first sight?
Definitely not. Like I said, we were friends for so long, and I think we saw each other in such a different light that
Mhm.
I don't think it ever crossed our minds that like we would, date and eventually end up married and having a business and a child together.
Yeah.
So it was many years before, any of that happened. And when we were friends, we always had like a great connection,
Yeah.
but it definitely was not like love at first sight. We were both, we saw each other also in our worst states. Like we
Okay.
weren't trying to like put on, like a face. We would just
Yeah.
hang out. So I saw him after like a breakup, and he saw me when I was like, looking really messy after a day at work
Yeah.
and not trying to like just put my best foot forward. So I think it was actually really nice because I think that way when you start a relationship, you actually know each other and you're not just trying to like pretend to be someone.
Cool. Cool. Who actually came up with the idea then? And did the other person have to be convinced to actually go ahead and do the idea?
I
Okay.
think it was both of us, but it was definitely Sahil, my husband, who pushed it in the beginning.
Mhm.
So, like I said, he was in business school and he was like just trying to think of ideas that would be interesting to work on in India when he moved in a year. And he was looking and he was exploring different spaces. So he was looking at like mental health, sexual health, men's health, and he was just like here for a summer talking to like as many founders and as many people as he could to understand like what's happening in India. And then at that point he talked to me about like doing sexual education,
Mm.
and he's like, I think that's super needed in India, and I think we could do this, and we could set up like an educational platform. And as we started talking, I was like, yeah, I totally agree. I think that makes a ton of sense. Like, so we actually started working on that idea before we launched MyMuse.
Okay.
And then that kind of fizzled out because we both got busy and we were both doing different jobs. So we didn't really like follow through. And then when COVID happened in 2020, we were both like, we had that idea. We should actually revisit it and actually try it. And then that's when I think both of us realized that content alone wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And we both kind of were like, we want to do something more and we want to do product. And then at that point, it was just like we were both super like in
Mm.
it. And we were like, this is great. This has legs. We can do this. And let's build off of that.
Interesting. So,
But I would say for me, like I would
yep.
just add there that like for me as a woman, like in India, doing sexual wellness was a lot more daunting
Mhm.
than it was for him. So even though I love the idea and like we are both like working on it, there were many times before launching where I was like, I don't know if I can go through with this. I don't know if I should do this. I'd have a lot of moments of doubt because for me, like it was still more of like a leap to be like, this is something I can tell, my extended community of like family and friends and people who know me, and just sort of that fear of judgment, because like this had never been done before. This was
Yeah.
not something that was talked about. I was like, am I really going to put my face out there as like the woman behind
Mm.
creating a pleasure brand for women in India? So it was a big step, but I think he really encouraged me, and like I just kind of had to go through my own process of like getting comfortable. And then once we launched and I started to see how well people were responding, it just really solidified my belief that this is something that India needs.
Mm.
And then I kind of just really became super comfortable with it. And now, I mean, I'm so just glad that we went through with it and I
Yeah.
didn't let that fear hold me back.
Yeah. What were the initial thoughts of your friends and family when you told them that you were doing it?
So we told my parents and Sahil's parents first, and I think they were generally really supportive. I think my parents were initially just like, oh, like, when it was just the content and education piece, they were like, yeah, cool, that makes a lot of sense. And then when we said products, they're like, what kind of products? And then
Mm.
we slowly got them comfortable there. And I think because they knew the intention was good and the intention was not something like sleazy and perverse, they were like quite on board. Our friends were like super excited. They're like, dude, this is amazing. You have to do this. Like, we can't believe this doesn't exist in India. And then as for like the wider, extended friends and family, I think everyone was generally quite supportive. I think like in India, like in most places, success breeds support. So when people started seeing the brand gain that traction, I think everyone was like, yeah, 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 like this is amazing. But who knows, right? Maybe people said other things behind my back. I don't know. At least on the surface, people were like, this is good, this is great.
Sort of how would you deal? How do you deal with the negative comments? And because obviously some people are quite conservative in India.
We do get trolls occasionally. I think for the most part, like all the people who engage with the brand and buy from us, I mean, they're obviously self-selecting and also like progressive and want to engage with the brand. So they're all like for it and very supportive. And then occasionally we'll get like trolls or just like guys or people just trying to be a bit like sleazy, and leaving comments. But we tend to just ignore that and move past it because I think no matter what you do, there will always be people who want to be negative or detract from it. But you have to just focus on the hundreds and thousands of people who are supporting you and who have seen the positive impact you're having. So I think you can't let that, get in your head.
In terms of the market, then, what's your biggest city then?
Biggest city is actually Bangalore. Obviously, the metros in India, the three metros, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, are biggest markets. Bangalore actually overtook Mumbai barely though, so they're quite close. And then it's actually quite crazy because about 20% or more of our orders are from tier 2 and 3 cities. So that's been really exciting because to us that represents a lot of potential for growth. And this isn't just limited to, like the urban metros, but it is like just a general universal sort of need.
Bangalore's the horniest city at the moment, so
so it seems, yeah.
What
I think honestly, like Bangalore, it's because I think it's just a very young, like urban professional audience. But yes, I think a horny one as well.
I was going to say, what are the least horniest cities in India?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I think in general, like regionally, the South is very open and very progressive. So we get a lot of orders from the South in general, and then Bombay as well, and Maharashtra. And it's actually quite evenly split, which is nice.
That's good. You mentioned finance and funding. Talk about that journey. How was it? Was it a painful journey? Was it an easy journey?
I would say it was not easy, but on the easier side because my husband has a lot of experience. He was a banker, he was an investment banker. I think for him, he spoke that language. And I think what we did was we were just very targeted in our approach. So we were very clear, like we don't want to reach out to investors till we're at a certain scale. Once we do, we want to be really specific about the ones that we meet and talk to only like consumer focused, D2C focused funds, early stage funds. And we were quite lucky that, we got 2-3 investors very quickly in our journey. So we launched our first products we launched the first 4 products by June 2021. And then we secured our first funding deal by October 2021. And those funds came in by early 22. And then we had a follow-on round in early 2022. So it all happened quite quickly. And I mean, I would say we are blessed to have some amazing investors who like really understand the vision and who were like ready to take that risk. I think that's the big thing, that because this was a totally new category in India, a lot of the investors were like, what's the TAM? And, what are the risks and what are the legalities and, XYZ, like many different concerns. Which is natural, but our investors were willing to take that bet because they understood our vision and our products, and they really believed in that. So, it was good.
Please tell me, when you did the pitch, you actually showed the products as well.
Oh yeah, we took them products. They were like, we want to test them. We want to have them. Like we went there with goodie bags. Like it was good. Yeah.
Cool. And any advice for our listeners on pitching?
I think the key takeaways are with VCs, like it's really easy to like try to, but they can see through that. So don't be really like precise in your pitch. And then obviously, know your fundamentals. Like they will ask, what's the TAM, what's the vision, what's the product line, what's the initial customer feedback, what are the numbers? They're going to want to know all of that. So have that all prepared. And then just, I think, focus on selling yourself as much as you're selling the business, because I think at the end of the day, VCs, they want to back people, not just ideas. So they want to invest in you as a founder. So focus on also selling yourself and your story, and that's largely what they're going to buy into.
In terms of the sexual wellness industry in India, what can we expect to see in the future then?
I think it's really growing. I think, I mean, I don't have the numbers offhand, but it's a massive market. It's continuing to grow. There are more and more players entering the market. I think we've really opened up the doors as well. Like since we launched, there have been a slew of other brands that have come up, and they really range in terms of price points, offerings. So I think increasingly in the next like 10 years, this space is really going to open up in India, and I think it's going to finally be like recognized as like a proper formal industry, not just, this sort of nascent industry that it is today.
It's interesting. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to be the first in the market? Because people are just going to copy you or just see what mistakes you make and you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's inevitable. I think a lot of people have learned from sort of like what we've done, and it's become in some ways like a playbook for some. But I think, look, it's great. I think being a first mover, it's called an advantage for a reason, first mover advantage. You can really capture the latent demand. You can really like start to become like a thought leader, like industry leader very quickly. You fundamentally will hold more trust because you've been around longer, and you can really build off of that. I think the key with being a first mover is that you have to like continue to evolve and not just like rest on your laurels, like, oh, okay, because we're the first, like, everyone loves us. Somebody might just come in and sneak up and be better than you or faster than you or cheaper than you. So you have to be vigilant and like keep evolving your brand. And just keep in touch with your consumer,
Keep in touch, yeah. What excites you most about what you're doing?
Honestly, I think what excites me is that we're actually having a tangible impact in people's lives. I think that's crazy. I think people say that a lot, and I think the word like impact is like really thrown around. But I genuinely feel like we are having an impact because I like talk to consumers and I attend, feedback calls, and I read reviews and I read emails, and I actually hear from people that are like, dude, your product changed my life, or, your product really like helped me in my marriage, or your product really helped me explore myself or have an experience I'd never had before. And I think that's like the most gratifying and motivating feeling.
Cool. You mentioned remote working. Do you have like a hiring philosophy? How do you go about hiring people for this?
So we have a really big team today. We have over 60 people working with us, both in person and remote. We have an office in Mumbai. We also run our own warehouse in Mumbai. So we employ over 60 people across both. And then some of the team is remote. So I think our hiring philosophy is just like create roles for people. Like obviously sometimes it'll be the other way and you'll have a very specific need and find someone. But usually when we talk to like people who we think are like interesting and smart and driven and have like the values that we're looking for, we will create roles around them, and they will prove to be really successful in the long run. And I think the second thing is, which is not so much a hiring philosophy, but a team philosophy, and that is promote from within. Okay. So we've seen that usually the best team leaders and department heads are people that have been with us longer and actually grow into that position rather than trying to get someone from outside to fill that role. And we've made that mistake, and it's always bit us in the face because it doesn't work. And usually your own people that have been with you for a long time and actually understand your brand and actually have built it with you, they're the right people to lead teams, even if they're younger or they're less experienced. They're the ones who should grow with you. So I think that's really like been how we've operated, and we've had people who've been with us literally since day one, and today they're managing teams of 5-10 people under them.
Last few questions. Oh yeah, what keeps you awake at night? What can go wrong?
I think there's so many things, right? Like, is somebody going to come in and do something better than us? Are we going to stop being relevant to the consumer? Are we not going to be able to grow as fast or as quickly as we want, or as our investors want? Are we going to, be able to keep innovating and bringing stuff that people need? I think the minute you're 3 years into the business, like you have to start thinking about what's ahead 5, 10 years down the line as well, and not just what's right in front of you. Because when you're building in like the early days, you're just thinking about like immediate growth, and getting to like the next step. But then once you're like, okay, I'm already here, I reached from 0 to 1. How do I now go from like 1 to 10, 10 to 100? And that's a very, very different journey. So yeah, I think we hope that we just keep doing our very best and we can keep bringing the right kinds of products to people and the right kinds of content that really resonate with them, and that we can keep growing, in the way that we want.
Good stuff. Yeah. What would this company look like in say 50 years time then? Because obviously you got these AI chatbot girlfriends on the market now. We'll be
Yeah, who
married to some
knows?
sort of virtual
Maybe
reality
in
world.
10 years, MyMuse will be an AI company or a VR company. I don't know. I think the future will look so different. So I think 50 years is too far down the line for me to even think. I probably won't be working on this, or probably be working in general in 50 years. But I do hope that MyMuse is still around. I hope that we're able to keep, because I think like intimacy is something that like it's recession proof, and it's era proof, and it's gonna, as long as people are around, people will be having sex. So I hope that in some way, shape, or form, whatever that is, we are able to like help enhance that aspect of their life. So today it may look like, the products that we have, but tomorrow it may look like services that we can provide, or, just something totally different. And I think that's where we have to keep our eye to the ground and keep talking to people and keep trying to give them what they need.
Is there like a retail strategy to this as well? Like an offline retail? Like, can they actually go to the shop and buy this?
That's a little bit tougher in India for us, because I think it's still something that people are less comfortable interacting with in person. I think the online aspect of it makes it a lot easier for people to buy. So for now, we focused on online only. We are available in a couple of pharmacies in India. So I think that's potentially somewhere where we'll look to keep growing, and then maybe like some specialty retail stores. But I think for us, we know the scale is going to be online, and not just our own website, but we're already available on multiple marketplaces. And of course, everyone knows in India, quick commerce is the thing of the moment, and it's going to be the thing of the future. So we're on all of the major quick commerce platforms, and that's really growing well for us, because I think when people need like a lubricant, they need it now, and they need it in like 10 minutes. They may not be able to like predict the need. So we're actively available on like all the quick commerce guys like Blinkit and Zepto and so on.
So why is it called MyMuse? What's the sort of meaning behind that?
So the name came to me like randomly when I was in the shower. I think so. Muse was like the initial thought, and then we added my to it. But when I thought of Muse, I knew I wanted the name for our brand to be just like short, catchy, easy to pronounce, and memorable. But I knew I didn't want it to be like overtly sexual either. And when I thought of a muse, I was thinking just about like this idea of like inspiration, finding a connection in someone or something. So like an artist's muse, something or someone that inspires. And this idea of my came in because it was this philosophy that you can be your own muse as well. And it starts with that relationship with yourself. And intimacy, like we genuinely believe, begins with yourself. And that's the only way you'll be able to have like a good, healthy relationship outside, is if you first, make yourself your own muse. So that was the idea.
Yeah. What would you say? What surprised you about your sort of entrepreneurial journey so far? Then, obviously, it's like 3 or 4 years, but anything surprised?
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime. Personally, it's been 3-4 years. It feels like forever. I think what surprised me is how quickly you can learn. I think definitely, when I started this, I had like 8-9 years of work experience, in different areas, but mainly focused on marketing and brand building. And I didn't think that I'd be ready to like start my own brand or like scale it and lead such a large team. But I think, as humans, we learn so quickly, and the more you do, the more you learn. So I think the big thing I would say is to anyone aspiring, like, don't be scared that you don't have all the answers when you're starting out, because you will learn them, and nobody who's starting out knows everything, like you will learn as you go. And you just have to like have a little bit of faith and trust in yourself and the process. And you will learn a ton. And, the difference you'll see in yourself in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, I guess, will be, so crazy.
Advice for our first-time founders then. What qualities should they have? What should they be focusing on first?
I think as a first-time founder, I think that's a hard one. I think the thing I would say is resilience. I think as a founder, you've got to be resilient and you've got to be prepared to change course or to pivot or to, to refresh or change any kind of idea or any situation because like it's so rapidly evolving. And like I said, you're learning so much in the early days that everything will not go according to plan. That's like a given,
Yeah.
So you have to be adaptable and you have to be okay and ready to like, to grow with it and not be like super rigid in your idea and not be like, okay, the first 2, 3 failures I have, I'm gonna give this up. You should be resilient because you will, if you keep at it, I think long enough, and if you're focused in your vision, you will see that success.
Has anyone helped you on your journey? Anyone you like to thank?
Honestly, I would love just to thank my family for supporting me in doing this because I think without that support, I wouldn't have taken the leap. And I think I learned I learned a lesson really early, which is that you can't let the opinions of 100 people influence the impact you could have on 100,000. So I wouldn't have been able to get there or do it without my family. So yeah.
Awesome stuff. Last question for people who want more information on MyMuse, what must they do?
You could go on www.mymuse.in, mymuse.in, or you can check us out on Instagram. It's mymuse.in. We have a ton of really interesting content. Like I said, we do videos, we do guides, we do blogs. So even if you're just looking to explore beyond products, we have a ton of things for you. You can subscribe to our email. And yeah, you can purchase our products anywhere in India currently from our website.
Anushka, thank you for coming on the show today. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you.